This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, a two-gentleman panel, as I have my good buddy Adam Emmert and Clinton Bonner. Adam joining from the road in his camper. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good, man. I was just looking for this gentleman you purported was here. I can't find him. Yeah, but it's fun that we have a full panel to talk our B-level free agent signings. This is great. I'm glad this is when we decided to do that.
Yeah, B-level, C-level. I don't know exactly where we're at right now, but I know that you guys released the top level guys who were immediately signed by the Seahawks, and that came out on Friday and Saturday on the podcast feed. There's three more to add to that group that we haven't yet talked about. And Clinton, thank you for filling in as host and covering those first three on that last show.
Oh yeah, tons of fun. It was that was. Hey, it's been like busy days, right? I don't think as Seahawks fans, we're not exactly used to all this pin action this early in free agency. Typically, we wait like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then we go into the draft and we're like, well, none of this is solved, so let's figure it out through the draft. And then John goes and gets a bajillion picks, and it somehow kind of usually works out. This has been a different trajectory in general, where it's like, oh, they're freeing up space and flexibility with these maybe some B-level players, but I feel like it's changing how I'm already looking at the draft and what we think we might do. At least it's changing my mind. I know I've changed a couple of times the last few days. I'm like, ooh, this means we're going here now. Of course I don't know, but I can suspect.
We can talk about how it could impact the draft in terms of the three guys who were signed here. I don't know if it necessarily impacts the draft in any kind of way. I see so many of these as providing depth pieces. We can get to the more interesting one first, but there was something that you said that I wanted to springboard off of. Oh, and it was the free agency aspect, because yes, after the signing of Geno Smith, I'm thinking, oh, well, we can just kick up our feet for a week. We'll sit out the first week of free agency. We aren't going to have anything to talk about until the next week. So, make some plans and have some things to do. And because nothing significant's going to come from the Seahawks in this next week. And then they go out and they get Draymond Jones from the Broncos and make the other moves you guys talk about. And then they sign Julian Love, which he's a safety for the New York Giants. And this was a little bit interesting because we talked, you guys talked about Ryan Neal and the amount of money, him just getting, a basic right of first refusal tender to his restricted free agent contract, which makes it so he's easily obtainable by any other team. All they have to do is offer him a contract. The Seahawks say, yeah, we're not going to pay that. And he goes and plays there. We don't get any kind of pick. For the way that Ryan Neal's played, it seemed like, I don't know, a second round tender would have been it would have made a little bit more sense. He gets a little bit more money. You get a second round pick if he ends up having to go. But this signing of Julian Love is interesting because it's somewhat similar in terms of his style of play. It was interesting, you guys talking about Brian Branch, which springboarding off of me talking to EJ Snyder about their ability to draft him potentially in the first round. This signing feels a lot of that. It feels like a lot of that same versatility that a player like Brian Branch offers. He can play safety, he can play nickel, and he's a team captain guy. So he's just it sounds like a solid team dude. And so this one was the more intriguing of the three signings that I think we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's funny. If you would have grabbed last offseason, Adam, and said, dude, the Seahawks have acquired Jay Love, I would have been thrilled because I was all in on Jordan Love. Here's the thing. I feel like I follow the league fairly closely. I mean, there's guys that eat and breathe this probably even more than I do. I'm sure there are. I had never in my life thought about Julian Love for 1 second. I barely knew he existed as a human being. Come to find out, hey, he was a captain at one point on the Giants. Right. He's played safety. He's played nickel. He's played kind of that hybrid linebacker spot a little bit. And Brandon, you brought up Ryan Neal, and this feels a little bit like Ryan Neal insurance possibly, but also too, the other way that I thought about it is like, well, what if it's not? What if the Seahawks are still all in on bringing back Ryan Neal?
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing is John Schneider and Pete Carroll want to transition what it means to be a safety or a linebacker in the league today, much like the NBA has gone to pretty much all wings, like guys who are 6'8", can defend, you can switch, all that. I feel like the linebacker safety position is going to be more like basketball on grass in terms of guys who are completely interchangeable and can play a little linebacker. They can play a little safety. They can play a little nickel corner. And I think that's maybe where the thought process is on this. And I think that's brilliant because in a league that everybody's getting away from running the football, at least that's the popular narrative, right? Why not have smaller guys at linebacker who can really run, that you can switch out in coverage and really confuse an offense? It's going to be interesting to see how they deploy this.
Yeah, the piece for me too is I knew him fairly well. I'm in the Northeast. My dad's a Giants fan. I'm on text threads. I grew up in Long Island, so I'm tethered to a bunch of Giants fans. And then, of course, if you're in the Northeast and you're a Giants fan, you're probably a Notre Dame fan. So, getting lots of Julian Love because he's just kind of been on my radar from that with that kind of a spectrum for me for a couple of years. And the versatility, I think, is the key thing, because he played safety, because he played slot. And that's the interesting part to me. It's like, well, what is this move? That's what I'm trying to Columbo and Matlock my way. It's like, I see 3 possibilities and maybe a 4th, but it's like, okay, is this really a Ryan Neal hedge? Because Julian Love can come down the box and do the things we liked about Ryan Neal, which are the things we really liked about Jamal Adams in some ways. Like Ryan Neal did a pretty good Jamal Adams impersonation, and then maybe did some things even slightly better and some things maybe not quite as explosive or as dynamic as Adams at his best. But it looks like Julian Love can do those things. So it's like, that's one thing. It's like, is it a Neal thing? Is this a Jamal Adams thing where he's not coming back? Or is this a Kobe Bryant didn't cut it in the slot and this is our new slot guy thing and we're going to bump Kobe out wide? It, to me, puts like a lot of chess pieces on the board. I don't know how to, suss it just yet, but I like that we've got some options to talk through. So Brandan, I don't know if there's any of those theories that strike you as the most rich, but I'd love to hear what you think, dude.
I think that he fits in all of those boxes to make all of those other moves possible is maybe why you do this move. That way, if Jamal isn't healthy and can't come back, then okay, you're saving however many million against the salary cap. You can use that to go boost up the defensive line or in another position. And that way, if Ryan Neal sticks around, then you have a full group of safeties. If Kobe Bryant doesn't work out, if you just want to have that as competition for him to try and elevate his level of play, it works out there too. The one thing Adam said, though, in terms of, you talked about the way that really wanting to improve this team against the run. Love, I think, was generally okay against the run. I guess the last game that they played against the Eagles, he was terrible against the run. So that kind of questions me of, but that's just one game. So
the Eagles blow people off the ball, though, right? Like that's a tough one to judge him against, because they pretty much ran over everybody, and then pretty much decided to not run the ball in the Super Bowl. But that's but it fits in with this theme of we're going and getting dudes that seem to be easily run overable by really good running teams. And it seems like the exact opposite way of that you may want to go if there's other teams, I don't know, like within the division with the 49ers, who, if they're not going to have a quarterback, they're going to want to run all over you. Who knows how the Carolina offense is going to play, but we know that the Rams like running the football if they can. And they may have to transition back to that style of football now that they're blowing up their entire team. So if that ends up being the case, and here we are transitioning to a defense that plays better against the pass, but all the other teams within the division are going to be running teams, that's not a very good strategy for this upcoming season.
Yeah, it could get tough that way, no doubt about it. As far as defending the run and whether or not these guys are good at that and that sort of thing, I do think Love is a guy that can play against the run well. We know Jamal Adams plays against the run well. Judging by some of the comments after Clinton and I's last video, it seems like on the Jared Reed front, there's a lot of differing opinions on how he plays against the run at this point in his career. So I think if you average that out, you go, well, okay, he must be about average. against the run. That'd be my guess.
Right.
After kind of hearing what
Quentin Jefferson level, he was about average against the run, right?
No, he wasn't. No. To me, Q Jeff was below average against the run and a slightly above average, pretty good pass rusher. That's how I would frame Q Jeff. That's why I think Reed is an upgrade specifically to stop the run. But Adam made some great points last time too, being like, well, when was the last time you really checked him out? And I could go, really checked him out? Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting with Reed, it's, you could say, well, he fit really well in this system when he was here at stopping the run. Well, that's not the same kind of system that they're running now that they were 3 years ago when he was in the system and stopping the run well. So it's going to be tough to project that going forward. But we have a couple other guys to talk about on defense in particular. They signed linebacker Devin Bush from the Steelers, a 1-year deal, a very, in terms of his salary and cap hit, this speaks to me as a guy who probably didn't have very many other options with the rest of the league, and he's coming here to try and he fits in that mold of players where the guys have a chip on their shoulder. They want to show off that they still have something left in the tank, and here's a spot where we don't have any linebackers and he could compete for linebacker, and right now he's probably linebacker 1.
That's a little scary, I would say, right? So when you said cap hit, I did think about the cap he wore when he signed. Don't know if you guys saw that beautiful imagery when he signed.
Yeah, man, he looked like Toad from Mario Kart, bud.
Yeah, that's hey, if you're gonna be a bear, be a grizzly, and it's amazing, right? It's just out there, and I love rocking that. That's great. You be you. As a player, and I went back and talked with some Steeler fans that I'm buddies with. I'm not very of the 3 that we're talking about today. This one to me is the biggest question mark. Now I know we didn't pay him a lot, but with the depth that we have at linebacker, I could just frame it as I don't think we're done quite yet at all. I hope. It just seems he's very athletic. We know this. If he were coming out today and did what he did, 3-4 years ago at the combine with 4 years ago with his stats, he'd probably still go really, really high. If he had that college pedigree and had that showing, he'd probably still go really high. Challenges, an ACL later, 4 years later, and it seems like he got back to maybe middling linebacker play last year. And now he's our
upgrade over Barton.
I don't think so. I really don't. Guys, I've been talking about how I thought Barton's okay for 2 years now, and I still think Barton's okay. I think Barton's a pretty good coverage linebacker. Doesn't always get the depth you want him to get, but he's a safety converted to linebacker. Cody Barton broke up a lot of plays over the middle. Cody Barton was a pretty good pretty good pass defender, pretty good. I don't think he's an upgrade over Barton. He might be, but that's also not saying that much. If that's my opinion of I think Barton was a pretty, your term, Adam, bang average linebacker. I know others feel differently for sure.
Yeah, I would be one of those guys. I think he's very much a below average linebacker and a backup linebacker. Devin Bush, this kind of smells a lot like when the Seahawks were doing the thing where they went after all the dudes from the 16th draft class, all those top 10 guys and that sort of thing. Because Devin Bush, a top 10 pick, then he comes in, has a great rookie year, blows out his knee, comes back, has a decent third year, and then last year was a little bit more of a fall off. Now, it does seem as if he's a starter level linebacker, and for low cost, you get a lot of possible upside as he continues to come back from big injury, maybe being in a different scheme, that sort of thing. He can get back to just running and hitting. I do like it in terms of it's very low risk, potentially high reward. And do I think this is the end all be all for them? No. And I think what we're seeing from linebackers with them not paying Bobby to come back again, at least so far.
Quandre's out there lobbying for it. We got Quandre on our side
every day doing
Yeah.
that work. Yeah.
I get it. Keep it going there, Quandre. I like it. But I think the Seahawks are looking at linebacker much like people look at running back. It's a position that there's young dudes that can run and hit that come out of the draft every single year. So spend a couple, third round picks or a fourth round pick on linebacker, fill in linebacker from there. Take a flyer in free agency on a Devin Bush type who has high level pedigree, but maybe the play hasn't matched that the last year or so. So we'll see. This doesn't fire me up. He's probably going to be the starter, week 1 at one of the linebacker positions, but I think there's a very strong possibility that he's riding the bench by end of the year, depending on who they draft.
Yeah, Brandan, I'll throw out a name and say this feels to me like last year's Artie Burns,
Sure.
who then just disappeared. It's like, it's like, oh, he was okay. He's a kind of drafted kind of high, and he was a little disappointing, but reclamation project. I hope I'm dead wrong, of course, right? Hey, nothing better than if he goes out there and plays a really strong linebacker. Like, wow, we got a steal. That'd be amazing. Right now, if I had to bet one way or the other, I just feel it's gonna be more the Artie Burns route. I hope I'm wrong, but that just feels to me like we're gonna be like, oh yeah, remember we talked about him for a bit, and then he was just gone.
I mean, the way that things are working out right now, Nick Bellore may be the starting middle linebacker, and then so we'll need Devin Bush to fill in on special teams for Bellore's role, because that's just too much work for a dude at Bellore's age at this point.
This sounds like all dime all the time, right? Like whatever one linebacker scheme we could throw out there as possible. It's which again, maybe the Julian Love thing is just put them all out there, put all the versatile dudes out there at once. But one quick thing about the Julian Love thing, back to the linebacker discussion though, is when we take a guy like Julian Love, to me, it just frees up another free square within our draft picks, just to say, okay, we probably don't got to take that other whatever corner, safety, slot guy. It's like if we were going to dedicate one of those to one of those, we probably just don't have to now. We have 10. We'll probably have 11 or 12 by the time it's all done, which means maybe we could go double dip or even triple dip into linebackers because we kind of need to.
And that's the reason why I really like the other signing of Evan Brown from Detroit, because you got a guy who plays guard.
No, wait. Can I cut you off on this here? Before you give your explanation of why you like Evan Brown coming in, I'm going to just sum it up real quick for you, because I know exactly why you like the Evan Brown signing. His name is not Austin Blythe.
Well, that's a part of it too. To me, we had the discussion about the dude for the Eagles, though, that had the same kind of versatility. And so I just want a dude who is versatile at these two spots. And that way, if they decide to draft a guard high, then they can do that. If they decide to draft a center high, then they can do that. And then you have other guys that can compete for that fifth spot on the line, because you have 4 solid guys at all the other positions. And then you're counting on, guys like Evan Brown and Phil Haynes to fill out that 5th starting spot. I like that strategy a whole lot. And Evan Brown, I think, what was it, like a
2.25.
Yeah.
Low
cost, low risk deal, and a guy who can play.
And seemingly really quite good, right? And better at center in 21 than he was at guard in 22, or at least like seemingly above average, which
just want average.
Blythe was below average. Posick, his last bit was at least average, and then he was good for the Browns last year. And he got paid, by the way. Posick just got a pretty good contract.
Yeah.
But at 2.25 to get, again, it's the versatility, right? Like you nailed it, because now instead of Seattle being like, hey, we got to go take a center and we got to go take a guard. Now it's like, choose your weapon. Which is the dude you really want? So you could be like a little bit choosier with that, which again, to me is like, we take back a free square, which I would associate with, I think we're going to get some more offensive weapons in this draft than we suspected originally, because we're doing these things that just bring in versatile dudes, which I kind of love.
Yeah. If you get to the 20th pick and John Michael Schmitz and Osiris Torrance are both on the board, and those are your 2 guys at each of those positions, then you can trade back and get a couple of extra picks, or an extra pick in the 4th round or 5th round, and then move back and take one of those 2 guys. If you like both of them, then that's what this sets you up to do, and it doesn't cost a lot. Yeah,
and I know that one of your biggest problems with Austin Blythe, Brandan, was the fact that he's more of a smaller center, right? And that's not the case with this guy. This guy is one of the big uglies, right? 320 pounds, just a massive human. And I like the idea of him playing more at center than, say, at guard. But then again, I'm not quite as high on Phil Haynes as a lot of other folks are. I think he's fine. He couldn't totally beat out a aging Gabe Jackson last year.
Right.
That kind of points to something for me. But then again, Pete and John, they love the guy, re-up him and all that. But right now, all these guys that we're talking about, these day 2, 3, 4 signings in free agency, these B-level guys, or however you see them, these are just all bet hedgers. And just right to Clinton's point, now you're not pigeonholed. You can go after whoever the heck you want to go after, because Evan Brown and Phil Haynes starting this year on the offensive line, that'd be okay. Be fine. I'd be fine with that. It probably would be a smidgen better than it was last year, just surely because of size for Brown. That's going to help a lot against the 49ers and teams of that ilk. And so I like it. I like it quite a bit. And for the money, holy smokes, you can't hardly beat that. And it's been a fun couple days. Like you said, Brandan, who here thought that we would have a ton to talk about here in free agency, especially a early day one guy, right? With right. Jones and all that. So a lot of cool stuff. It's fun. It's a fun year to be a Seahawks fan, no doubt.
It's fun. I don't know if I see it as a huge improvement type fun. And like I said, there's some concerns that go around this particular grouping of players just when I look at the teams that we have to face in the division. But I also know that there's a lot more work in the offseason to do. There's the draft, and we have some top picks that I'm a whole lot more excited about are the picks than I am the free agents and how our success goes next year. It's going to be more based on how they do in the draft versus I think how they did in this first week of free agency.
Well, and I think to summarize, the first week of free agency has cleared up a lot of flexibility for the draft, right? Like that's what we just said in the last 20 minutes, where it's like there's more freedom now, even though you get a boatload of picks. Great. Not a good start. That's a great start. You got your 5. I mean, what is it? Four in the first 52. Okay. Ridiculous. And the moves we have made really allow for the best player available type thing. So if they're sitting there and they're like, they trade back from 20, but then Michael Mayer is still there, or Zay Flowers is somebody's still there, and they're like, we want that piece. Just go ahead. Just go ahead, because with that trade back, then they could take O'Cyrus Torrance a little bit later, perhaps, and still get the guard that can compete with Phil Haynes. And then maybe there's an upgrade there. And it's just, I think if they're playing a game of poker, I think they're playing their hands pretty darn well so far. That's what it feels like. It's pretty strategic and really smart. I guess it's kind of easy when you get a quarterback in a nice contract that you really trust. You have a gazillion picks and you have some cap flexibility. With that, freaking that's John Schneider doing his thing. There's been other GMs who have the same situation or even better and below it. John Schneider really hasn't. He's had his ups and downs with draft picks. But when you kind of give him like you actually deal him a good hand, he's sitting there with pocket queens. He seems to know what to do with them. And I think we're seeing that, kind of in this exercise so far in this first week, which is super duper. I just said super duper.
Super duper,
it's
guys.
Super
duper, guys. Right, neato, gang.
Yeah. Well, gee whiz, golly whiz bang. This is a really great start to free agency. We didn't touch much on Drew Lock coming back. So he's back as the backup.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about it. And I know in the comments on the last video, Clinton, a couple of people being like, well, don't just say you're out of the QB market at 5 now, because you could still get your guy for the next 5-10 years. And it's like, or 10-15 years. And to me, like, there's one guy in this draft that I think is maybe that guy. And I don't think the Seahawks are going to be in position to draft him. So I just don't see any of these guys this year in this particular draft being one of those guys that you can pencil in and be like, well, if we spend the pick on quarterback early, then we're good for the next 10-15 years. I just don't think that quarterback exists in this draft where the Seahawks pick.
I think it reminds me a whole lot of the 2012 offseason when they went out and got Matt Flynn. They had Tavares Jackson on the roster, and nobody thought that the Seahawks needed quarterback going into the draft because, look, they addressed it in free agency. They got a dude who's coming back. And so when Russell Wilson gets picked, it's like, picking a quarterback in the 3rd round, what a waste of a draft pick at this point when you have Matt Flynn and Jackson on the roster. So again, it frees you up to then draft, and you don't have to get somebody if the guy ends up getting taken early. It seems to me, though, that at number 5, it's probably not going to happen, but I think that that's fine because with the way they've been more active in free agency, it does kind of make me wonder where Pete might be at in terms of, okay, this is the team that we're going to go and try and win another chip with, versus really seeing this as a 2 to 3 more year project. And you're seeing Geno more in that Tavares role than you are, as the guy that's going to take you. And to me, it just seems more like they see Geno as that guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you said that resonates most with me is that Pete is getting the opportunity through John and then through Jody, right, to take his last shot in a good way, right? Because he doesn't have he's an extremely youthful 72-year-old. God bless him. I hope when I'm 72, I can still throw a football and coach the Seahawks. That'd be cool.
We might still have 4 more or 5 more years of Pete. I wouldn't put that past him.
No, I totally agree. I'm not saying it's like a 2-year window and then he's going to just be snapped out of existence here. I don't believe. But still, that 4 or 5 year window, that's it. That's still the window. That's now. I think they're taking their shots, and I think they realize they got the talent in the NFL. Look at the Eagles, right? Just look at the Eagles. They just got there. They were top of the world. Holy crap! What a roster! There's 19 dudes in the NFL, 19 who had over 10 sacks last year. The Eagles had 4 of them. Okay, now they're getting shredded. Like, they might still be good because they got some young guys to fill in, and they got Hurts. They are a good team still, no doubt. But will they be back? There's no like nothing written in stone. The Eagles are absolutely going to be the best team in the NFC and make it back. There's so much fluctuation. So I think with all the quarterbacks really being in the AFC for the most part, Pete's sitting there going, yeah, Geno versus the field in the NFC. We give him the right protection. We run the ball well and we stop the friggin' run. Yeah, Geno could get us back. He could get us to the Super Bowl. And I think that's what they're gearing for, which I agree with. I'm an optimist, but there's that whole thing of like, Geno can't win it. Geno can't do this. There's still Seahawks fans who don't think Geno can get us to a Super Bowl or win it. And I don't understand their point of view. I don't square with it. Don't know about you, Adam.
Well, I really love that you ended up going right where I was kind of thinking here. If you are taking this shot in the next couple of years to really go after it, I mean, definitely get after it now. Yeah. With the NFC being as weak as it is overall, when you really think about it, there's not too many teams you look at and are like, yeah, they're a legit contender, right? And the Seahawks are in that. And it's because they have Geno locked up and he played as well as he did, and now being able to build the team out around him. The idea that you can't win a Super Bowl with Geno is, being declarative that way, right? Nope, right. Can't do it. Can't happen. Can't do it. That's just false. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. You can do it. Now, is it more or less likely than having Patrick Mahomes on your team? Well, it's less. Yes, 100%. So they're not completely wrong when they say, well, you can't win it without Geno, but you just, you roll the dice. It's the best you can find. And he performs well in the system. He fits the city. He fits the roster. He fits the system. I just think it's a no-brainer. And now you've got a guy that, for all accounts, last offseason pushed Geno throughout the offseason for that starting position in Drew Lock. So if something does happen to Geno, let's say he doesn't even get hurt. Let's say he flounders. Yeah. Well, okay, you got hope in Drew Lock coming in, and you're pretty well set. And I guess the biggest argument on draft people is, well, bring in Richardson at 5 if he's there. Well, okay. He's a tremendous athlete, and he tested amazingly well. He doesn't play quarterback very well. It's just he doesn't have much experience. Everybody banged on Fields' experience coming in the year that he was drafted, and he had like 200 more or a bunch more games than Richardson has at this point in his career. So he's just super duper raw. He's much closer to Malik Willis than he is to maybe a more polished prospect. So I'm ready to roll with Geno. I think it's the right move in this conference at this time with this coach. I'm fired up.
Well, those same people were lobbying to take Malik Willis in the top 10 last year, and the Seahawks could have ended up having him in round 3. So maybe that's what ends up happening with Richardson. After the performance that we see, and people are thinking, oh, well, yeah, he's top 10 quarterback, obviously, because of the measurables. Well, until we get to the draft, we don't know what's going to happen. And last year's quarterback market showed exactly how experts can say in the draft that, oh, there's going to be these 3 top quarterbacks. And then we see Matt Corral and Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis all go later on in the draft, and the only first-round quarterback you get is Kenny Pickett. So that's why I'm hesitant to buy into this thought of, oh yeah, well, there's going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 5 because these are the 4 guys that we're talking about. Okay, we'll see.
I'm still not convinced that Houston is absolutely taking a quarterback. They probably are. With, a brand new coach who's a defensive coach, he might be like, I want Will Anderson. I want a defensive guy. I don't discount that that's actually still a possibility too. It's people seem to just check it off as like, oh, no way. Not after, who they just brought in, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just like, well, maybe. I mean, Mills is not a terrible quarterback, right? I don't think he's terrible. So to your point though, Brandon, I just don't think it's this set in stone thing. That for the first
right.
5,
and with a new coach, maybe their idea is, hey, I'm going to build up the defense. I'm going to build up the offense. I'm going to build up my team and then go get the quarterback, which seems like where teams have had more success lately. So I could see absolutely with that perspective of Houston going defense and then saying, hey, the quarterback class is fine, but is Bryce Young really an upgrade over Davis Mills? Maybe
he's more mobile.
No, it might be an upgrade. It just, for what you want to do, the delta between Will Anderson and your best defensive player is probably greater than the delta between Davis Mills and Bryce Young. And so if you're looking at it that way and saying, I like the quarterback classes 2 or 3 years down the road, let's build up the team. Yes, it could. And I don't like that scenario because then that means that's one less defender that the Seahawks have the ability to take at number 5. But it's I'm preparing myself for all the different options.
Oh, for sure. And, as far as this quarterback class compared to last year's, it's a better quarterback class. I think there's one guy who's clearly a first-round pick I think that's Stroud. And then I think that Levis, Richardson, and Bryce Young are all 2nd or 3rd rounders. Like that's how I would grade them. If I were a GM, there's potential there, but gosh, there's just so much alarming stuff on the other 3's tape that I would have a difficult time pulling the trigger on any of those guys at, 2 or 3 or 4, if the cards end up trading out and that sort of thing. I don't think I would do it there for one of those guys. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. And I did want to ask you guys maybe one last question too. Do you have any more free agency? Like, is there one dude that's kind of still out there, or position or a dude that you're like, ooh, yeah, I would like Seattle kind of cap this off with this particular guy. Brandon, you got a head nod going, so maybe you got an answer
I use Quandre Diggs' Twitter account as my cheat sheet, and so that tells me that Darius Slay is the next target that the Seahawks need to go after.
Well, he re-signed with the Eagles. So
he did.
Yes. He re-signed with the Eagles the moment he kind of became a free agent. But it's a good. I like your logic. I like where you were going.
Yeah. Well, I guess then the next guy on there is Bobby Wagner. I got to go with him.
Okay, Bobby, not bad. How about you, Adam? You got any guys out there that you're like still, you got a little twinkle in your eye over still?
I wouldn't be sad if Wags was back, but I've been on the tranquil table for this whole offseason so far. I would love to see him come in as an off-ball linebacker. He's so good against the run, and he's way better than Cody Barton at defending the pass.
I like Tranquil, dude. I like him a ton. And like, if we could go pluck Nuosu a year ago and then Tranquil this year and like get them both on like fairly good contracts with they're really hitting their upside as professionals and like as hitting their peak, as athletes, man, I am with you 100%. That'd be a really, really cool get. I would put that. Yeah, I'm all in on that. I don't think he would cost an arm and a leg either. And then I have a crush that I've had for a while now, and he got released by Buffalo, and that's Isaiah McKenzie. I always liked his game. A couple of years ago, I was like, when we were drafted D. Eskridge, I'm like, just go get Isaiah McKenzie. He's a free agent. He could be that guy. Now, I think I was a little wrong. I don't think he's a wide receiver 3, but boy, oh boy, could he be your gadget wide receiver 4. Like, I really like that dude in that fourth option type thing. He's so quick. He just could do all the jet sweepy things and really, really just be that change up to what are like the traditional, Metcalf and Lockett out there. And we'll see what we do for a third wide receiver this year. That's my guy. I still would love us to bring in Isaiah McKenzie. He's a cold weather guy. He's used to playing outdoors. And now he's a free agent. He would not cost a lot, but he's going to make some team better. So I hope it's us.
All right.
Yeah, you'd mentioned Tranquil would be cheap, and I think the projected salary for him was something like 2 years, $8 to $9 million.
That's not.
Yes, please.
I know. Like, we're talking about bringing back Bobby for 5 plus 6, something like that. Sure, I'd rather have Tranquil with the deal you just said. Like over every single time, 10 out of 10 times. I just would rather have him. I know that's going to upset some Seahawks fans. However, I like speed and youth.
All right. Well, we will have to see what they do in free agency. I think there's, speed and youth. There's plenty of guys in the draft that can fit the bill there too. And I think you guys nailed it with some of the discussion about linebackers and how they associate a little bit with running backs. So, but hey, it's Devin Bush season right now. Devin Bush, Nick Bellore, your top 2 starting linebackers for your Seattle Seahawks heading into 2023. It does seem like the clear place that they need to upgrade in the weeks going forward. So we'll have to see what they do. So thanks, guys, for hopping on. Thanks to everybody who's listening. If you want to become a member of the flock, getintheflock.com. We've got some new members. We're going to be doing some call outs on the next show. It's been there've been quite a few folks, and we got some new people in the Ring of Honor on Facebook too. So
nice.
Thanks to everybody who's joining in, and we'll give you a shout out here on a show coming up.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.